Hey, today we sit down with K Trevor Thompson, who's got a great story about working in corporate America, launching these wonderful experiential events in organizations from iFly to Ripley's to Guinness Book of World Records, doing all these fun things, but realizing he was always interested in real estate. And it wasn't until he had a chance to invest passively that he realized this was his calling for the next phase of his career. He has since invested in over 34 syndication deals, 20 as a limited partner, 14 as a general partner, and he breaks down what you need to know before investing in these deals, specifically as an LP, and why everyone should invest as an LP before becoming an active investor. If you want to learn how to grow and scale your portfolio, this is a conversation you certainly won't want to miss. Check it out right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7 questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to the show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. K Trevor Thompson started his real estate journey back in 2018. And since then, he's invested in 34 syndications, 20 as a limited partner and 14 as a general partner. Now, his mission is to help 100,000 people invest in commercial real estate, earning double-digit returns to achieve financial independence for themselves and their families. Let's welcome to the show, Trevor Thompson.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, it's great to have you on. I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah. So I spent most of my life in the attractions and entertainment world. So I'm originally from Niagara Falls, Canada. All through high school, worked for Ripley's, believe it or not. Then I did 18 years with Guinness World Records. So I ran a franchise in Niagara Falls, ran a company-owned location in the Empire State Building in New York, opened a franchise in Hollywood, California. Biggest claim to fame there was lunch with Michael Jackson when we gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. Pretty cool. Not too many people can say they've met him. And then I actually wanted to open my own Guinness in Orlando, Florida. That deal fell through. So strangely enough, I opened a year-round haunted house. I did that for 3 years. Then I got recruited by a company called iFly Indoor Skydiving. And I opened 46 of 80 locations. In 20 years, I worked with them. I got let go during COVID. So I was always interested in real estate. All of my friends were doing real estate deals. Several of the businesses I had real estate deals, but I had a very big misconception. I thought you had to be a millionaire to be able to invest in commercial real estate. I really did. I just thought didn't want to do single family, terrified of toilets, tenants, and trash. Didn't like calling people to work on my house. Why would I want to make that my way to have a second stream of income? So I did what everybody else does, right? I kept just going around the Monopoly board, collecting my paycheck, wishing I could get into real estate. And then I did get a payday when iFly got bought out by private equity. So I thought, that's it. There's no excuse now. So I did those 3-day weekend seminars. Anybody done those? The first 2 were complete scams. Like, they're going to teach me how to buy an office, $30 million office building with no money down on my credit card. I thought that was a little flawed. And then the third one I went to talked about multifamily and syndications. And it was like, where have you been my whole life? Hence my mission to have 100,000 people learn about it, which is why I'm always excited to get on shows. I want people to know that they can own a piece of commercial real estate through investing in syndications. And it was game changing for me. Obviously, 20 passive investments, 40 is on the 14 on the sponsor side. I think you could say I was hooked.
Trevor, I love that background, man. Your experience is fun. And as a guy who grew up in marketing and doing a lot of experiential marketing, I feel like I could talk to you for about an hour about your experience there. But obviously, we're here to talk more about real estate. And I love what you talked about, right? Like many people, you were focused on your job, focused on your career, interested in real estate, but thought you had to be really wealthy to invest, right? So for you, it was something you just saw on the slide. It's like, who really wants to be a landlord? Nobody,
Yeah.
right? And that's something, people do it. Even if you are a landlord now, it's not something you ever really wanted or aspired to achieve, right? It's just something you said, we can make some extra money if we do this. But no
Yeah.
one wants to be a landlord. So to your point, you just decided, you know what, let me just focus on this. But when you had the opportunity, when iFly got bought out, that was an opportunity for you to say, you know what, I do now have some excess capital. Let me go ahead and invest. Let me start learning more about real estate. You attended these seminars. Two of them were scams. The last one was one where you really learned about multifamily syndications. And since then, you've been able to invest in 34 deals. And I think it's really important too, because one, obviously, the folks listening to this show know that everyday regular people can invest in larger commercial real estate deals through syndications, just like you and I. But also, it's just understanding the strategy that's right for you.
Yeah.
Because you started off as a limited partner. Talk to me about that, because as you're attending these events, you're learning about real estate. Did you attend those events with the intention of going out and buying a piece of property that you would kind of own and manage yourself, or were you just looking for places to park money?
Yeah. So I was, to be honest, when I first started, I had a full-time job. I was working 80 hours a week. I was traveling all over. I didn't have time to be what's called an active person, right? And so I started as a passive investor. And I actually believe everybody should start as a passive investor. You always want to be the customer before you're the supplier or the whatever. Because as a customer, I learned a lot. How was I treated? How did I feel? What were my reasons why I was hesitant to invest? What made me interested to invest? And then, of course, joining this group too, it kind of gave me a who. I always say that the most important thing about real estate investing is the who, not the what. So you need to find people you know, like, and trust. So I joined this program. The people were there. They had regular meetings. They were the coaches within the group. Um, and so I call that earn and learn, right? So I wanted to be able to invest, but I wanted to be passive, meaning I didn't want the responsibilities, but I wanted to learn. I was an insatiable learner, right? So I attended every property tour, every webinar. I volunteered for anything that they would let me do as a limited partner to gain my experience.
Trevor, great insights right there. You talked about knowing that you had a demanding job, a demanding career. So being active really wasn't feasible for you at that moment, but you wanted to learn still and you wanted to earn while you learned. So that allowed you to jump in as an LP investor, a passive investor, but you continue to learn and join a group. And you talk about the who's, right? So who are you
Yeah.
investing with? And that's really, really important, because as you grow and scale and you learn more, then you can decide if it's something you really want to be more active on.
Yeah.
I know a big mistake I see a lot of people make is they jump onto the active side, assuming they can make more money being active. So they say, well, I'm just going to do it myself or raise capital and do these things. And they don't understand how much work is really involved. And maybe that's, my fault and folks like me who, get on here and talk about, all the beautiful things you can do with multifamily. But the truth is, it's a lot of work. It is work. There's a lot of education that goes into, a lot of knowledge that you have to figure out. There's a lot of relationships that have to be built, a lot of management that takes place. And for a lot of folks, if you're not fully aware of what it takes to drive a successful deal, you could be biting off more than you chew. You said earlier that everyone should start as a passive investor. Elaborate more on that thought.
Yeah, so I believe that everybody should start their journey as a passive investor, right? I believe that you should experience. So you're asking people, when you buy a deal, you're asking people to come and be passive investors with you. And I think gaining that experience, being a passive investor, knowing how you feel, knowing how and making sure you're really analyzing every step of the process so that you know how you could be. Because again, when we buy it, we're normally syndicating it ourselves again. And I think that just understanding your customer journey is super important, and understanding what's important. And then again, investing with people that will answer your phone calls, answer your questions, let you do things. You can't beat it.
20 LP deals. You talked about learning what's important and who's going to answer your calls. Give me something that was a surprise for you as a limited partner, a passive investor. Give me one surprise that you learned over those first 20 deals.
So I think the difference between people that I thought would be good communicators and were, and people who weren't. I always tell an example. I was invested in a property. I'm literally watching the news in the morning, and there's a fire on that property. And so I text the guy I invested with and says, "Is our property on fire?" "I don't know." 3 days before I got an answer, "Yes, it was. And here's where we are." And then even a harder lesson, turned out they didn't have enough insurance and ended up in a repossession because they couldn't fix it. They didn't have replacement cost insurance, which again blew my mind. How in the world did I even think to ask the question, do you have replacement cost insurance? And I know we don't want to talk too many negative things all the time, but I was like, how can you not tell me? And then it was actually me following up with him. And 10 days later, there was an email to the investors. And again, that's a pretty serious thing. That's a pretty serious chain of events. And again, I know I was up at 5 o'clock watching the news and he wasn't, but the fact that it took him 3 days to even verify it was very frustrating. Now, on the other side of the coin, I'm not that Monday morning quarterback calling, "Why did you do this? Why did you do that?" Because that's not helpful to anybody, right? Everybody can be a Monday morning quarterback saying, "Well, you should have done this. You should have done that." I just wanted to ask why and what did you learn? And by not being confrontational and saying, "Hey, listen, I just want to learn. Why did we do that? And what did you learn doing that?" And just try to ask non-threatening questions. So I could build my own education.
Was that the same deal or that's a different
It was a
conversation?
different
Okay.
deal.
So this is really important for our listeners because what happens sometimes is we focus so much on the real estate components of this, and certainly that this is still rooted in real estate.
Yeah.
But a lot of this business comes down to the same things that are relevant in any business. It's communication. It's understanding, your exposure you have, doing that risk analysis, right? So where do we have exposure? What needs to happen here? How do we protect against this? And not everyone understands that.
Yeah.
And I know for me, when I first came into the space as an operator, I had some blind spots because I was not a guy who grew up in real estate, but I was a guy who grew up in business and understood systems and teams and processes. I worked for General Motors. I didn't know how to make a car. I was an engineer. I was a marketing dude, right? But understanding how those folks and bringing those subject matter experts together and being able to lead that team and understand what our objective is, that was my skill set. But it took me a minute to process and really feel comfortable recognizing that was my gift and that was my space, right? And at times, especially very early on, I deferred to folks who were really great with construction, but they had terrible communication skills or terrible business skills. So they knew how to build a wall. They couldn't take a budget and make sure they built it on time and on budget. So those are the issues that we faced early on. And the point you're getting at is, you're talking to people, you're trusting that they know what they're doing, but the communication was awful. You found this emergency situation. They couldn't even confirm what was happening. 3 days later, you get the confirmation. Then you find out that they weren't properly insured. So 10 days later, they send out a communication. And the lesson here is really for both operators and for passive investors. For operators, you got to communicate. You may not feel comfortable with the news. It may not be good news, but communicate. It's critical. You will learn. You will gain more respect by facing, I don't want to say facing fire, but, by standing up and taking accountability and clearly communicating what's going on, then ducking and dodging. And we've seen that more over the last year and a half, where deals aren't working as well as they did on paper. And now you're starting to see what these operators are made of. Because here's the deal. Everybody's great when things are great. They are, right? If things are good, any relationship you have, people are wonderful. If everyone's making money and everything's going smooth, it's all great, right? You don't really know someone's character until adversity hits. And that's when character really reveals itself. And you want to partner with people who are built to handle adversity. As you reflect on the 20 deals and even your stance as an operator, how do you identify that? Like what kind of, screening mechanisms or tools or tricks do you use now to recognize, hey, you know what? This person is someone that I know can handle whatever happens at the property.
Yeah. So I think getting comfortable with who you're going to invest with, right? And again, I'm very comfortable with very few operators. Okay. I learned a lot of lessons, and I'll always go back to this story that one of my best passive investments to date, I actually went to a webinar that this sponsor did about something that went wrong and how they didn't achieve the results they wanted for their investors, what they learned. And I was actually talking to somebody the next day. They said, I was on that. I couldn't believe they shared that. And I was the opposite. I'm so glad they shared that, because these guys have learned a lesson. They were honest, and I invested. It was a great investment. Reinvested. Like, my money came back at 10 in the morning and went at 11 that same day to their next deal because of that, right? Because you're looking for people that do it. Warren Buffett says nobody knows you're swimming naked till the tide goes out. It's so true, right? A lot of people were swimming naked, and it's just what it is. So the who is super important, and doing your due diligence, and just, I always avoid, I call them the overpromise, right? Nobody sends you a deal saying, I got an average deal in an average city with average returns. Would you like to invest? Nobody ever sends that, right? We all say we got a great deal with great returns and conservative underwriting, right? But is it really? And you need to know enough to be able to ask those questions, to look under the hood, and there's some real simple things that investors can do. Hey, first of all, is it realistic, right? Can I really get $300 rent bumps, or is $100 pushing the income ratio in the neighborhood or to the comps in the area? And just some simple things, right? Looking at it, and then again, with a lot of the stress that's happened in the marketplace, a good LTV with fixed rate debt, turns out to be way more important than anybody thought, right? Because, it's just when who would have thought that interest rates would go from 3 point something to 7, 8 point something? Nobody, not in a million years. And did anybody think it would take this long to come back down? Not in a million years, right?
Yeah, and that's it, right? That's the challenge there, is that there are things we can't control and things we can't control. To that end, as an operator now, you talked about, the fire, and we talked about interest rates. Like, there are things that, again, uh, investors just, they're out of your control. You have no control over interest rates. You have no control over the fire. Yet these things still can impact your investment. How do you kind of reconcile the things you can control with the things you can't control as an operator?
I mean, I don't know if you can, right? You need to be experienced enough. You need to have deep enough pockets to ride certain things out. You need to have the good connections to be able to get the, good loans, the good insurance, and so somewhat size does matter nowadays, although it doesn't mean everything, right? There's a couple of big guys that have gone out with big, and they were way over leveraged, and once the market changed, that they were super struggling. But I think at the end of the day, you really just got to feel comfortable with people's character. And, are they genuine and true? And do they care about your money more than their money?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, right? And most people, people listening may push back and say, oh, well, no one's going to care more about your money than, their own money. I think part of this, though, is understanding what's their real goal.
Yeah.
Because it's very short-minded to make sure you make money on a specific deal as opposed to running a business that can feed you and your family for generations. So for most of us, we recognize the long game at play. And by doing right by our investors, by building a business that's sustainable, that is going to take care of our money, right? But if I'm doing a deal and say, well, so what, based on the agreement, I get paid XYZ first, and so what if you don't make the return you want? Well, you're probably going to alienate not just that investor, but many other investors.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about, right? When it comes to characters, just someone who understands the long game and really trying to monopolize or monetize for the long run, not necessarily for the short run.
Yeah.
The other thing that stands out to me when I'm listening to you talk is really thinking about the character of the operator. Because there's two components. There's the character and wanting to do well, but there's also the competence. And some of that just comes with experience, right? Because, go to your point on the insurance, not everyone's going to know that. And that's why experience matters. Also the team, going back to your who. It's not that that individual needs to know the answer to every single question, but you need to surround yourself with a team that does. And as we're on this topic, if you want to know questions to ask, we have a guide. It's 7 questions you must ask before investing in apartments. And you can get that on our website, casmoncapital.com/7questions. But the reason we put this guide together is for what you're talking about. Like everyone says, this is a great deal. It's conservative underwriting. How do you know? How do you test it out? How do you ask the right questions? And when you come to the point about whether it be insurance and coverage and stuff like that, the truth is you're not going to know as an LP. You're not going to know every single question you need to ask. So what you really want to do is figure out, are you betting on the right horse? Is this person, the horse and the jockey, right? So because that you want the person who knows these things, but you also want to make sure that they've aligned this deal and structured in a way where the risk of loss is minimal with the things they can't control. Now, again, certainly there are factors that they can't control, but those are the things you want to understand. And one of the questions I like to ask, I'm curious how you approach this. I like to ask, what would it take for this deal to go sideways? Great. We see the returns and how this deal can work and be great. What would need to happen for this deal not to work out? And I want to see how they've really thought about it, because obviously there's threats to every single deal. So you just want to understand what those are. And ideally, they're going to tell you how they're going to mitigate that risk. But tell me about your approach, right? So how do you identify where potential risks are to deal?
So again, you need to understand your market, right? A lot of people, especially people start out, I meet a lot of new people, right? I live here. I'm looking at deals here because I hear it's a great market. And no, I don't have anybody in that market. Well, are you crazy? I gotta be honest. Are you crazy? Like it just doesn't work. I'm not going to give my money to people that don't understand the market, right? And so you need to look for operators that live and breathe their market that they're in. Now they may expand markets and do different things, but it's super important, right? That you're starting to ask them, what do you know about the market? How many assets do you own in the market? What are you, whose boots on the ground? Are you doing this full time? Again, there are a lot of part-time syndicators out there. And, I understand that the whole team may not be able to be full time, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a couple of people that this is their life, right? They live and breathe it, and it's just super important that they able to do that. And again, you just want people that really understand.
No, I love that. Trevor, you have taken your experience as an LP, converted that to be a GP yourself. What drove you to want to get on the other side of that table?
So a couple of things drove me. So number one, I ran out of money. And so being on the other side, I'm using other people's money to make some money, right? So, eventually you run out of money, right? You don't have enough of your own to keep growing that money. And then I did get let go during COVID, and I thought, okay, I'd already started to get more active, and I thought, okay, this just will be my final career, that I'm going to become active in real estate. And so, I still invest my money along, but eventually using other people's money to be able to buy deals and to shore up my GP portion, I needed still to create that income so that my money that I was investing passive could continue to compound, right? I didn't want to live off of that. A lot of people think I'm going to start passive investing until I have enough money to live off of. And I always tell people, hold on a minute. Compounding is your friend. So leverage makes you the money. Compounding makes you rich. And so you want to keep growing that money, right? I turned 65 not too long ago, and somebody sent me a text. Warren Buffett created 50% of his net worth after the age of 65. And how did he do that? Compounding his money, right? And so there's a lot of things. So I just reached this point where I wanted to be sure that I was able to be sustainable.
Trevor, I
Also, I
love that.
really enjoyed the team environment. Like, I love my team. We work hard. I love my team. I love everything we do.
I love that approach, right? Because what you're getting at is understanding how money works and how, the time value of money really works. And that compounding component gets lost sometimes, right? We talk about retirement, we talk about, financial freedom and things like that. But, it's almost like running a race, running a 5K, but not realizing you're really in a marathon. It's like, yes, you cross the line for the 5K. Great. You're not going to, you still got life to live, so what are you going to do for the next 20 years, 15, 30 years? What about your kids? What about the family, right? So understanding like what your real goals are and how to invest in a manner that gives you the most flexibility over your lifetime, I think is really important. One of the reasons I think so many people do get attracted to the syndication space, because now you're not limited based on just the capital you have in your own bank account, but you can partner with others, you can scale the business, you can grow. And it's not meant for everybody. And I think going back to the character conversation, that's where you have to identify, well, why is this person in it? Of course, we're all in it to make money. That's a given. But does this person care whether or not you make money, or are they only focused on whether or not they make money? Yeah. And that's the thing you've got to figure out through that process. You've got massive capital. From your standpoint, there's a number of groups out there, and I get this question from LPs all the time, but from your standpoint, what makes massive capital difference?
I think the fact that we all are both passive and active investors, it was quite interesting. And in fact, my very first mentor, my very first investment was one of the partners of Massive Capital. So it's kind of like life going full circle, right? Somebody that I knew, and he actually stepped away for a little while and then came back in. But having a good team is so important, right? Being part of a team. And we talked a little bit about my transition. My transition was brutal, from LP to GP. I mean, I was trying to buy real estate in one of the hottest times in the hottest market of Texas. I was getting nowhere. I finally got on a deal. I put $75,000 hard because that's what you had to do. And guess what? My very first GP deal, I lost $75,000 hard. That was a tough lesson. And it was an interesting lesson, though, because it's funny, again, how it goes full cycle. One of the partners of Massive Capital, before it was formed, I was trying to do a deal with that original investor. And his first question to me was, have you lost any money? And I went, yeah. And he goes, good. I want you to know how that feels, because I don't want you to lose my money. And we never did get that deal. But, it's kind of funny how something that's devastating actually turned out to be, I understood it. I really understood it. Like, very first GP deal, that was a lot of money to lose.
I love that question. Have you lost money? Because I don't want you, or I do want you to know how that feels. I think that's the biggest thing with people in this space too, right? Like, if we're peeling the onion all the way back, right? I think part of the reason many of us invest passively is because we don't trust ourselves as operators. And why should you? You've got zero experience. You don't know what you're doing. And this is a large commercial deal, typically speaking. And you're still with sharks here, people who, this is all they do every day. And if you got a full-time job and you're trying to figure out real estate from listening to podcasts or reading some books and getting on bigger pockets, like, yeah, you're probably going to get crushed if it comes to you competing with a group that has a full-time team, a full analyst, and all these things, right? With that said, you've got to go through the process to get over those fears and learn what it is you should be looking for so that you can develop your own investing thesis. Whether you stay passive, whether you decide to be active, none of that matters. Your journey is your journey. Your approach is your approach. but do it with confidence, not out of fear. And if you do it with confidence, you're learning the skills that you need to learn. You're connecting with people. You talked about a mentor and just kind of being around other people. And I think that's so important. Can you just talk a little bit more about from the transition from LP to GP, losing a $75,000 in that deal, to actually getting that first successful syndication? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So the first one I got on was I just helped someone, a friend of mine, who needed somebody to come in, help out with some capital raising. And to be honest, I'd already had some investors from my first deal that they got their money back. So I was able to move them into the deal. And then the next one, I'd been networking with this group for 2 years, trying to do a deal with them. And that happened. But I didn't really get traction till I moved into being part of massive capital, right? Being part of a bigger team and being, on those original deals, we were finding deal. I'm not an underwriter, but I can read it, understand it, doing all the things, to actually being on a team that, again, we're sizable group. We have two analysts underwriting deals. We actually now have a mastermind. So there's 300 students underwriting deals on a daily basis. There's a lot of flow. And there's a lot of things, and there's a lot of people that are doing things. By the time a deal gets to me to start the capital raising, all that other stuff is kind of taken care of. And without that, I just could not be successful, right? Without a strong team. And again, when you're picking your team, don't look for harmony or people like you. It's kind of amazing. Like there's 3 partners in massive capital and me, and none of us are, we're 4 very different people, and that friction can create innovation. And a lot of people are just afraid of that.
Sure. I think it's really important to know, especially when you talk about partnerships, because to your point, I think people naturally look for partners where they gel and they have a lot in common and they click. And the reality is a partnership should be more like a business. And if you think about it, you don't need 2 heads of marketing. Yeah. Somebody's got to lead finance, right? And finance and marketing typically don't gel quite as well. So, but you want that. You want someone who's going to lead operations. You want someone who's going to lead operations, marketing, sales, these different functions. And that's what you should be looking for in a partnership, is kind of the foundation to build a successful business, not just people you enjoy being around. It's great if you enjoy being around them, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But do you have the business needs covered with the people in the partnership? And if not, you may want to reconsider. Trevor, great stuff, man. I appreciate everything you shared about your journey, launching and kind of building with massive capital and the deals that you've done up to date. For folks that want to learn more, you're very active on LinkedIn. So K Trevor Thompson, we will put a link to your LinkedIn bio or your LinkedIn page in the show notes so folks can connect there. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. All right, Trevor, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Yeah, so I think losing that $75,000 on the first deal, that's a big failure. That hurt. Wow, that hurt. But it really made me work extra hard to make sure everything was secure.
Love it. Great one there. Appreciate you sharing that. Give me a digital or mobile resource that you would recommend for our listeners.
So I mean, for me, I'm big on social media, right? And so I live on my phone. And, people always say, do you ever sleep? And because I just love it, right? So for me, That's how I connect with people. That's how I, stay active. That's how I get noticed. That's how I support other people and get my message out about helping 100,000 people learn how to invest in commercial real estate.
I love it. All right, give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Yeah, so I'm going to cheat and do two. You got to listen to Grant Cardone 10X on Audible, but it only makes sense if you follow it up with Be Obsessed or Be Average, both on Audible. That man can talk.
All right, 2 Grant books there. Check them out. All right, give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Yeah, so I think it's daily. Every once in a while, it's daily right now. I'm back on it, but waking up in the morning and dedicating some time to myself for fitness. And then I always listen to a book while I'm doing my fitness. So it's kind of like my body and my brain get worked on at the same time.
Give me your number one insight for being a successful LP and GP investor.
So people don't care what you know till they know you care. Showing people you care.
I love it. And you're out in Texas, so I'll let you pick where, but give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
To do what now?
To grab a bite to eat.
Oh, bite to eat. So I live in Austin, Texas, and there's a restaurant in the Domain called North that has like a fresh made pasta, and I love it. It's kind of a guilty pleasure.
I love it. Sounds like a great place there. Well, Trevor, great stuff. Really enjoyed hearing about your journey, starting off in the, really events and experience space, right? Working with, iFly before that with Guinness and Ripley's and just all the fun activities that you were able to do. But you were a busy professional, right? Interested in real estate, finally started to learn more about it, investing passively. During the COVID, you kind of lost your job, and that made you or gave you the opportunity to transition and focus more full time on real estate. To date, you've done 34 syndication deals, 14 as an active investor, 20 as a limited partner or passive investor, and just sharing some of those tips and insights. And it always comes down to the who, right? Who are you investing with? Do they have the competence and the character to lead and drive your investments? Are they in it for the long haul? Are they in it for the right reasons? Everybody wants to make money. We get that. But ultimately, it's about picking the right partners. That's going to allow you to scale and grow your portfolio and really having the long view, right? Not looking at it from a temporary standpoint, but the long view, that's going to set you up for success. Again, if you want to learn more about Trevor, check him out. Go to LinkedIn. We'll put a link to his show note or his page in our show notes, and you can check him out there. Trevor, thanks again for being a great guest and coming to Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.